Hello, everybody, and welcome to our series on Saint Isaac. And this is going through his homily again. And this is homily number 2 that he has. And we had started this a little bit ago. So last time I did this. But now we are going to continue with what he has for us today. So I'm really excited for it. No video for today, but we will get through this together. Okay, so Saint Isaac says the service of the cross is twofold. This corresponds to its twofold nature, divided into two parts. First, patience under bodily troubles, accomplished through the soul's power of anger, set to good use, and this is called practice. So, essentially, you want to serve the cross. There's two ways to do that. The first one is through patience under bodily trouble. So when you are physically feeling troubled, maybe you're sick, maybe you're not doing well, maybe whatever the case is, in physically speaking, there's something going on. Well, how do we serve the cross in this way? Well, patience is accomplished through the soul's power of anger. So there's anger inside you. You got to use it for the right reasons or for the right in the right ways. So you have it oriented toward it being the good it needs to be. Now, it says that the second is the soul's subtle intellectual service of continual communion with God, constant prayer back and forth. So, first thing, patience through bodily things, through physical nature, and second, continually being in communication with God, constantly having that communion with God and having that conversation that really never ends because it kind of feels like when you have like your best friend or someone you're married to or whatever the case is, someone you're really, really close to, you can sometimes start this conversation mid-sentence because there's so much history there. It's kind of like that with God. The first purifies the part of us that moved by passion through power of zeal, and the second clears the intellect through the influence of the soul's love, which is natural appetite. So essentially what he's saying is like, okay, well, look, you want this to be fruitful. Well, it's going to be fruitful. The first one, the patience one, it's fruitful in that it moves the desires and it reorients them through zeal. And the second, it doesn't leave room for many other thoughts. I think when there's a constant communication with God, when you're in constant communication with God, He's always at the forefront of your mind. And if He's always at the forefront of your mind, then He kind of is, He's always there. And so it moves your mind away and it clears it away from other things. Anyone who moves to the second part before being trained in the first, drawn by its delight, whether eagerly or rather carelessly, stirs up God's anger against himself. So he's saying the first part has to come first. He has dared to set his mind on the glory of the cross before mortifying his members on earth. That is, before healing the sickness of his thoughts by enduring the blows and shames of the cross. This is what the ancient saints meant. If the mind tries to ascend the cross before the senses have fallen silent through weakness, God's anger will strike it. This is very interesting. By saying that ascending the cross causes anger, they don't mean the first part, patiently bearing troubles, which is the crucifying of the body. But the theoretical ascend, which is truly the second part, and rightly comes after the soul, is healed. Interesting. Because I don't know if I am like completely understanding this, but nevertheless, I feel like it's interesting because God is, well, not God, but we are Our senses have to have fallen silent. We have to send with God after we are healed. So the first step is to ask God for healing, I suppose, which would be really cool as well. Now, let's see. So he says this path is dangerous day and night, even for those sight is sound and full of light. Sight and sound is not that they're able to see physically, but more so spiritually, seeing with the eyes of the soul. And so he says, this path is dangerous. Who possess so and day and night, even for those whose sight is sound and full of light, who possess grace as their guide, whose eyes are full of tears, and those who by prayers and weeping turn day night into day on the account of danger of the journey. The hard rocks they meet, and the phantoms of sham truth that often appear among those who pretend to be genuine. Even if you're guided by the truth, this is still something difficult because there are phantoms of sham truth, not real truth, but something that is fake, something that is a look-alike. So divine things present themselves in their own account without our contrivance, if the heart's place is pure and undefiled. If the tiny pupil of your soul has not yet been cleared, do not dare to look at the globe of the sun, lest you lose even your ordinary sight. Simple faith, humility, confession of the heart, and light service that matches your strength. He is essentially saying, look, if your eyes are not purified yet, if your heart is not 100% with God yet, if it hasn't been healed, seek first that healing. Seek first that healing before you take the bigger steps. Simple faith, humility, confession of the heart. Those are things that match your strength. The things that Saint Charbel is doing do not match my strength, right? But the things that he has done, they don't match my strength. There's such a vast difference. But what I can do today is simple faith, humility, confession of the heart, and light service that matches my strength. So at least you be cast into the intelligible regions that a darkness without God, like a man who dares to go to the banquet in filthy clothing. From labor and wakefulness comes purity of thoughts. From purity of thoughts comes inner light. From there, the mind is led by grace towards what the senses are neither able to teach nor to learn. Consider excellence of the body and temptation to the soul. Together, they form one complete spiritual person, composed of what is sensible and what is intelligible. As the soul cannot come to existence and birth without the body's formed completion, so contemplation. The second soul, the spirit of revelation. I don't know if I lost you guys, but I for sure lost myself, so I feel like I need to go back and read this again. So let's go through this again. All right. Consider excellence to the body, to be the body, and contemplation to be the soul. All right, got it. So if you were looking for excellence, which is what we started in episode 1, so the first homily that he started talked about excellence. So excellence to be the body and contemplation to be the soul. Together, they form one complete spiritual person. That complete spiritual person is composed of what is sensible and what is intelligible. As the soul cannot come to exist and birth without the body's formed completion, so contemplation, the second soul, the spirit of revelation, cannot be formed in the womb of intellect, which receives its fullness of spiritual seeds without the bodily practice of excellence. So if you want to be spiritually growing, if you want to receive that knowledge, you have to practice excellence. And excellence, I'm trying to refer back to the first homily, but excellence is also its persistence as well, right? So as you go and you practice excellence, which is the dwelling place of knowledge that receives revelation, because that body is where that intellect lives. So contemplation is the grasp of that divine mystery hidden within what is spoken. When you hear of being far from the world, or leaving the world, of being pure from the world, you first need to learn and know, not as a novice, but with the impulse of true knowledge, what the term world means and how many meanings it bears. That's a very interesting. That's a very interesting point, because what he's really saying is this: y- to leave the world, right? We constantly talk about detachment from the world, but what is the world? Well, he's saying, well, it has many meanings. And so he continues and he says, then you'll be able to discern how far you are from the world or still joined to it. If a person does not know first what the world is, he cannot understand how many of his limbs are bound to it or free from it. Makes total sense. Never thought about it. Makes total sense. I don't know what the world is. I don't know if I'm attached to it. By careful reflection, he says, the world is defined as extending a single common name over distinct passions. If we wish to call the passion by one name, we call them world. Interesting. So all the passions are called the world. If many, if we may name them separately, we call them by their proper names. These passions are part of the world's ordinary current. Where they have ceased, there the world's current has ceased. They are love of riches, hoarding possessions, flattery of the body, which gives rise to tendency towards carnal desires, love of honor, which is the source of envy, existing power, pride and arrogance, and high office, folly, seeking glory from people, which breeds anger and bodily fear. And now, I do I have to say here that this right here is so incredibly important. I, if I could pause the video, I would pause the video and I would write these things down. And it's probably what I'm going to do after, because these are the things that where we could have a benchmark, or we could have something that we could compare it to, which then would make things make a lot more sense. If hopefully that makes sense within itself. But so what I can do is I could say, well, I want to figure out what I'm still attached to in the world so that I could give it up, so that I could have that be with God. So what are they? He gives us a list of them. I love the practicality of this stuff, by the way, because it's all laid out for us. So love of riches, hoarding possessions, fattening the body, which gives rise to tendencies towards carnal desires. And of course, there's more and more things that you could break these things up into, but then he gives us these major categories. Where their flow has been dammed, there, there the world, after their pattern, has to some extent stopped being maintained and existing. This is like some of the saints who, though alive, are yet dead. For their body, for they live in body, but they do not live carnally. I hope we get to that point, I guess, right? See in which these passions you are alive. Then you'll know how many parts of you are living in the world and how many are dead to the world, right? So if you want to walk away from all the attachments that you have, and you want to change that attachment and cleave on to something that is better, which is God, right? Himself, all of these attachment to these parts have to die. So he gives us this list and he says, go down this list, and what you see that is still attached, this is how you know that these are the parts of you that you need to work on. These are the parts of you that you need to focus on, not all at the same time. They don't all have to happen at the same time, but these are the things that you need to focus on so that you can get to where you need to go. Okay, so once you have learned what the world is, you'll be instructed in these distinctions and whether you are bound to the world or free from it. In short, the world is bodily conduct and carnal thoughts. Very much in short, because you know what? That's his entire point, is that the body is where these things start and they're expressed. And so the world is bodily conduct and carnal thoughts. The other portion of it is our thoughts and where they're at. So the conquest of the world is to recognize in two ways: by a change in conduct and by alteration in impulse. From the impulses of your mind towards the from the impulses of your mind towards the things which it strays, you can measure your behavior, to which your nature turns without effort. I love this. He's actually giving us a benchmark. He's saying, well, look, you want to measure your success? You want to measure, quote unquote, your ROI, your return on investment? Well, let's figure it out. From the impulses of your body or your mind, towards the things to which it strays, you can measure your behavior. To which things your nature turns into effort. To which things your nature turns without effort. Which inclinations are constant and which are stirred by chance. There, whether the mind acts only to grasp incorporeal impulses or whether it works entirely through material things. Whether, okay, before I go, I want to go through this for a second. You're measuring the mind, you're tracking your thoughts, and you're saying, okay, well, what are the things my mind turns to without any effort on my part? What are the thoughts that when I am so tired, this is the first thought that I think? Or this is the image that I constantly have in my mind, or things like that. What is it turning into? And then we would begin to say, well, what am I actually attached to? What needs to change in my life that would detach me from all of this? So he says, whether it works entirely through material things, so is my mind shifting as a result of a material thing? Whether this material bent is a diseased state, right? Or whether the impulses are merely the imprint of the mind's service to the body, is where are these impulses coming from? Is it coming because my body needs something? So that the mind, against its own will, becomes deluded about the very faculties by which it performs virtues and from which in soundness. It's the mind is so strong and it's so powerful. It draws its motive from zeals and concentrated thoughts, so that mind can act only the mind can act in bodily fashion, even when the loftiest aim, because of lack of experience. So even when you don't want it to happen, these thoughts go astray and you are distracted. And that comes because of lack of experience, which is reaching beyond. And this kind of was his premise at the very beginning. Don't look above you in that sense, and kind of like have these things die first so that you could advance the spiritual thoughts, which makes sense, right? And so he says that because of lack of experience, even if it's not naturally diseased, and whether the mind is not afflicted by the unseen touch of imagined imprints, given its intense radiance of God, which is accustomed to cut off vain memories. These brief descriptions in this chapter are ought to enlighten a person who is quiet and discerning, and they outweigh many books. That's very true. Bodily fear is strong in a person, so strong that it often holds him back from worthy and honorable deeds. But when it comes to face with the soul's fear of God, it is swallowed up by it, as cold is swallowed up by the force of a flame. All right, my friends, that is it for today. And sorry for the lack of video, but hey, we did it. Hopefully next week or next time we do this, it will be on chapter 3 or homily number 3. If you have any questions, you can find me at The Word with Rita, and I will be with you in the next episode. Bye for now.